Thank you, John. I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to be associated with Toronto. You may not know the story, how I first heard about this. I was in a restaurant in Soho in London, in Gerrard Street, in a Chinese restaurant, and having a meal with my friend Lyndon Bowering and Charlie Colchester, who was church warden of Holy Trinity Brompton. And while we're waiting for the meal to come, Charlie spoke up and said, "Have you guys heard about this Toronto thing?" And I didn't know what he was talking about. Lyndon didn't know. I said, "What do you mean, Toronto?" "Well," he said, "I don't know where to begin." He said, "They pray for people in our church, and they fall to the floor and they start laughing." And he said, "Last Sunday night, my wife and I left at 11 o'clock at night with 50 bodies on the floor, and they were laughing. What do you guys think of that?" Well, I looked at Lyndon, he looked at me, and if you'd put me under a lie detector and asked me did I think that was of God, I would have said no. For one thing, I didn't want it to be of God. I find that offensive. But the main thing was, if it really was of God, it would have come to Westminster Chapel first. And I went to the pulpit at Westminster Chapel, honestly, ashamed to say, and warned people. I did. I meant well. I warned people. And some weeks later, the other church warden of Holy Trinity Brompton, his name is Ken Costa. Do you know Ken? John, do you know Ken Costa?
I've heard the name.
You've heard the name. Well, he knows you. And he dropped me a note. He said, "Have you got any sermons on 1 John 4, 1, 2, 3, 4? And I said, "Yeah, 4, in fact. 4 sermons on those 4 verses." He said, "Could I see them?" He sent a courier over, and in an hour he had 4 sermons. And he said, "I want to take you to lunch this Friday, and I need help. Something's going on at our church, and I need your advice." And I was honored that he would ask me. And so I went to have lunch with Ken Costa, he's chairman of Alpha now, and he is a prominent banker, layman. And I went ready to warn him of everything I could think of. And before the lunch was over, I was in fear and trembling, because I know how, take the Welsh revival, there were evangelicals against it. In Jonathan Edwards' day, there were those good people, supposedly good, against it. So there's a tradition of against unusual moves of God. And I found myself in that tradition. And I began to see that what Ken was describing, although it was alien to me, and I didn't know any good precedent for it, I called Louise as soon as the lunch was over. I said, "Honey, I think we've got it wrong." That evening, when the deacons gathered together for our Friday night School of Theology, I said, "I think I have had it wrong." And they said, "We're with you." And on Sunday morning, I called Ken. I said, "I'm going to the pulpit today to climb down." And I did. And I said, "You know, I warned you. I was wrong." And I said, "What's going on at Holy Trinity Brompton? Don't understand it. But anybody who wants to get a blessing of the Holy Spirit, go there." Many did. Some came back, some didn't. We've never looked back. And then a year or two later, when John and Carol had us here, I've been associated with this church ever since. And every time I come here, I just say, "Lord, thank you that you let me be here." And I'm so thankful that I climbed down and said I was wrong. And I've never looked back. And now, years later, I think this is the 4th time I've been here, 3rd or 4th. John's actually praying that I won't be able to preach tonight, you know. You remember what happened the first time. That DVD, it's, you ought to give me a royalty on it. That's all right. I have a sermon on total forgiveness. Here I am. Louise and I have both been amazed at God's goodness. I think, without embarrassing John or Carol, what I think most of them, I said this to Steve and Sandra Long last night when we were having a meal together, is their integrity. I know what I'm talking about. They've got integrity. And that is something that some people don't think is important. I think it's everything. And anyway, enough of that.